The impact of Jerusalem, Athens, and Rome on Western civilization. Western civilization is not an easy term to define. It includes the culture of today's Western Europe, USA, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Western civilization dominates both the Old and the New World. It is the major source of cultural change in our times. Communists in China use public education against it. Traditional parents in India are frustrated by it. Religious fanatics in the Middle East fight wars against it. Indigenous societies all over the planet are finding it harder than ever to insulate their young people from the impacts of Western civilization. How did our Western society emerge? This is also a very complex question to answer. To do this in a few minutes, one must simplify the historical narrative. In this case, we must focus on the major influences of three ancient peoples: the Hebrew, the Greek, and the Roman. The institutions that evolved in those cultures are the three pillars of what we call Western civilization. Remove one of them, and the whole structure crumbles. Without any one of these three ancient peoples, today's world will be unrecognizable, less prosperous, less decent, and less free. The Hebrew pillar. Our modern Western civilization owes more to the ancient Hebrew religion than any other institution. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's monotheism paved the way for future prosperity. For many polytheistic cultures, nature is sacred. Because it is inhabited by spirits, people are severely limited in using natural resources. To the Hebrew, transforming the physical world to satisfy human needs was a divine mandate. Further, every individual is fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of a loving and just Creator. That is our foundation of human rights and freedoms. The Hebrew God is not capricious, vindictive, and random like the gods of all ancient people. Hebrew scriptures present Yahweh as an omnipotent sovereign over both the physical and spiritual realm. God is not manipulated by human desires. His will is always done on earth as it is in heaven. God's law endures forever. Yahweh has created an ordered universe. That makes morality objective and binding, and it means that the laws of nature are discoverable by reason. Such a worldview is the first step in unleashing human curiosity, ingenuity, and innovation. The Greek pillar. Philosophy and politics, ethics and aesthetics, arts and sciences, theater and poetry, architecture and sports. The Western world today owes all of this and so much more to the restless spirit and creative energies of the ancient Hellenic people. Even the name Europe comes from a Greek myth. Athenians pioneered a systematic effort to overcome superstitions. Socrates paid with his life for it. The Greeks left behind the fatalistic explanations of primitive cultures. They embarked on a path of discovering causes and effects through empirical observation and logical reasoning. The Hellenic cities suffered bitter rivalries and internal political skirmishes between aristocratic and populist factions. Despite this, the Greeks became aware that they were different from all Mesopotamian cultures. Persian kings fought the usual battles for power, prestige, and resources. The Greeks, however, realized that they stand as a last line of defense for individual freedom against Oriental despotism. Every Western people that grew to prominence since then educated their children in reading both Christian scriptures and secular philosophy in ancient Greek. The Roman pillar. Rome became the third pillar of Western civilization through conquest. By swallowing Athens, they became Hellenized. When Roman armies incorporated Jerusalem into the empire, they established a mechanism for Christianizing the whole West. The Eternal City served as a carrier of Hebrew revelation and Greek reason to the rest of Europe. In addition to that, the Romans must be credited with promulgating one of the most important ideas in Western society, the rule of law. That concept would become the foundation of the American Republic. Roman progress in science and technology built roads and aqueducts crucial for their prosperity. Even more important for the future success of the West was their recognition of the sanctity of property rights and voluntary contracts. Rome's laws were codified by the emperors Theodosius and Justinian. They would become the legal force for the civilizing of the barbarian kingdoms on the continent. The Roman concept of legal personhood would one day lead to the introduction of the joint stock company, without which modern capitalism would have been impossible. Conclusion. The most exceptional element of Western civilization is our concept of individual rights and personal responsibility. Unlike the gods of Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, or Rome, who use people as pawns in their chess games, Yahweh is the source of human rights. All of God's injunctions in the Hebrew Scriptures are in a singular form: thou, thy, or thee. The eighth commandment given by God to Moses is "Thou shalt not steal." It is open-handed, prohibiting the taking of anything that belongs to another person, including life, liberty, and property. When the West became Christian, the spiritual individualism and the rejection of political absolutism of Jerusalem was mixed with the secular spirit of independence and the fierce intolerance to tyranny of Athens. These classical liberal ideas were given permanence by Roman republicanism. Over the centuries, sacred norms became written legislation. Established forms of due process and appeals reduced the abuse of human rights. Government checks and balances gave common people protection against despotism. The Western world was ready for its ascent.